You're listening to The Brian Mansell Show, streaming exclusively on Spotify and YouTube. New episodes every Monday and Friday. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Brian Mansell Show. As always, I'm your host, Brian Mansell, and I've got a podcast or a vodcast, whatever you want to call it. To me, this is a podcast dedicated to everything that is great about the game of football, whether that be at the NFL ranks, the college ranks, or even at the high school level. This show covers all levels of the great game of American football. And today we've got to talk about a few major stories. First off, we're going to kick things off with our segment This Week in Football, discussing all the latest news that is broken down in this past week in the football world. Following that, we'll get into a big piece of information that has now come out where the NFL Referee Association has officially signed the CBA agreement with the NFL for the next 7 years. That'll be expiring in 2032. This means we won't have any more replacement officials. We'll get into that a little bit and some of the new details in there that's going to actually demand more accountability from the referees and the officials this season. After that, I didn't want to talk about this, but we're going to have to talk about it. The Dianna Russini scandal with Mike Vrabel, we're going to have a serious discussion about this now that we have more evidence and photos coming out. I've been doing everything I can to kind of avoid touching on this topic since I've spoken with Dianna in the past, and this is just not something I wanted to get into, but I feel like it'd be wrong for me as a commentator and as a person to not talk about this. So I'll give my opinion on things, my experience with Dianna, and also, where do they go from here? And also what's going to happen with Mike Vrabel. We'll go into all of that. Then Kenny Moore has been released by the Indianapolis Colts after they failed to find a trade partner for him. We're going to dive into the tape and take a look at what he does well and why I believe he still can be very valuable for an organization looking to beef up their secondary and add a little bit more variety and spice to their defense. And then finally, our feel-good moment of the weekend. It's going to be way more positive than the last episode, but I promise you it's a very good moment to discuss. And we're going to just touch on it really quick at the end of the show. But until that point, let's get into our first topic, This Week in Football. To start off our news segment, let's take a look at what happened last week. Skylar Thompson is signing with the Baltimore Ravens. This is now the fifth quarterback that this team is carrying on their roster. I don't get it personally why they need 5 for the time being, but the best information we have is from Jamison Hensley, who said that Minter spoke about it with the team, and that they would carry 3 to 5 QBs this offseason. And then he had mentioned that Baltimore could also look at some veteran QB options. Looks like Skylar Thompson is that veteran QB option. So that currently means they have Lamar Jackson, Snoop Huntley, Josh Johnson, Diego Pavia, and Skylar Thompson on their roster. Realistically, going into this season, they should only carry at most 3 quarterbacks. We'll see who ends up being the odd men out and who ends up making the roster. But either way, I get they want to create some more competition. It's probably because of the injury concerns with Lamar the last couple of years, not being 100% healthy, missing some time here and there. They just want a more viable backup option just so they know that they could still compete even if Lamar can't play. I think that's more of the objective on their side of things. Let's go ahead and get to the next major story here. We go on to the Seahawks, who went and signed Dante Fowler this last week. And he's on a 1-year deal now worth up to $5 million. You don't know, he's a former number 3 pick in the 2015 draft. He's now in his 12th season. This guy has been on and off in his career for the most part. You remember his time probably with the Jaguars early. He had spent time with Atlanta, but his best years have came in the last couple of years with both the Commanders and the Cowboys. In that time, this guy has completely turned his career around as of late, and now he's becoming a more coveted prospect in terms of his ability to rush the quarterback. That's essentially what he is great at, is being a pass rusher. Nothing too much beyond that, and I think that's really what Seattle needs right now. Their defense has been getting completely destroyed over this last offseason. This past offseason, they had lost a lot of good players following their Super Bowl win, and they're finding every way possible to try and rebuild the defense so that they could still compete and try and go back-to-back again, hopefully to grab their 3rd championship as a franchise and complete the first back-to-back since Kansas City did it just a few years ago. So we're hoping, at least Seattle is hoping, that this addition will help get the defense back on track. And on our next story, we talked about our last episode about the New York Giants and what was going on there, why they were spending so much on defensive linemen. Well, now we have our answer. They've been doing it because they wanted to get DJ Reader, but they wanted to make sure they had an insurance option just in case they didn't land him. Well, they just landed him. Last week, they agreed to a 2-year deal. This is a guy who has been a very, very effective run stopper, has put up 12.5 sacks in his time in the NFL. He's a veteran. If the word ever if you had to create a definition for the word veteran among defensive linemen, this guy fits that. Same thing goes for guys like Calais Campbell. But this dude is just your prototypical big body you put in the middle of the line that can go and play either way, that can pick up 2 gaps and be able to fill and hold off the running back and force him to have to change direction, where then you could set traps and stop him from getting any positive yardage. He's that perfect gap fill person. I love that for DJ Reader. And I think this is a really good move for the Giants, who are still having a very productive offseason, just constantly working as hard as they can to create the most competitive team possible here in year 1 with John Harbaugh. So I want to give their respect as well. Let's also talk about another major story. Stephon Diggs found not guilty of assaulting his private chef. This has been a story that's been around since December, and there's been a lot of heat behind this one. But just let it be known, he was found not guilty. Now, just because he's found not guilty doesn't mean he didn't do it. I want that very much understood. Okay, guys, get away with a lot of things in the courtroom. People get away with a lot. And it does happen where they're found not guilty because there was not substantial evidence, or there was conflicts in the story just from the people who are there to provide some kind of, testimony. There's a conflict there, and when that happens, then the case gets thrown out because they can't find a consistent story to make the charges stick. So just because Diggs was found innocent or found not guilty doesn't mean he necessarily is innocent of what he did. He still could have done it, but they just didn't have the evidence to prove that he had done it. So therefore, he's found not guilty. So there's that. But this should open the door for him to get a spot somewhere else. The number one thing for Diggs now is, if he gets suspended, how long does he get suspended? Because I expect at least a 2 to 4 game suspension here, potentially. If not, he gets a hefty fine, probably around like $100K, probably about $100K, I would think, for a fine. $100K, $150, somewhere around there. I think that's about right for Diggs' situation overall. And so we go into last week, a story that broke out last week. In the last episode, we talked about it. The Steelers put Rodgers on a tender so that this way, in case a team tries to sign him, the Steelers have first rights, which means if he comes back, he's going to play. He has to play for the Steelers unless they say, we're good. But in this case, we have an update coming out of a radio station from Pittsburgh that apparently Rodgers met with the Steelers Friday and this past weekend, and it's expected he will play for them in 2026. There is nothing official. There is no contract. There is no official deal. Aaron Rodgers is looking to play for the Steelers. That's the story supposedly, but it's not confirmed. They haven't put any ink to paper. There is no money conversations yet. Nothing is finalized. But the reason why they're having this meeting has to do with the fact that he would have to play for $15 million if it's on this tender, which we all know Aaron Rodgers is not playing for $15 million. He's going to play for more. So they have to work out a deal and finalize it for Aaron to come back for another season of Steeler football. And I think this is the right move. I don't know how much I love it, though, but I mean, I like the young guys they have already in the wings. I'm a little annoyed that Rodgers is deciding now to come back and play another year. But either way, I mean, you're waiting on your franchise guy to make his decision. In this case, he made his decision. So we're waiting to see how the Steelers work out a contract and if he's going to play for Pittsburgh this year. Because it's not finalized, anything could happen. This whole thing could break down, and we could have Rodgers wanting to play another year, but he'll play for anybody. And that'll literally change the scope of the league quite a bit. So we just know that Rodgers has intentions of playing again. They're just trying to work out the financials of things. Nothing is finalized. Next major story, Jawan Jennings has a contract agreement with the Vikings. He just officially signed it today. He's got a 1-year deal up to $13 million max, but he has a base of $8 million. This is now another weapon they're adding for Kyler Murray in Minnesota. With Justin Jefferson, Addison already there, now they are adding our guy Jawan Jennings from San Francisco to the mix. So this is just creating a maximum amount of opportunities for Kyler to make the most of what's given to him. That's what he has to do. And in this case, we're going to see that hopefully this Viking offense can help do more this year after what was a very, very disappointing season last year with J.J. McCarthy. We can only hope that this offense gets back on track and that they can compete once again in the NFC North, but there is no guarantees, and I think this time around we could be looking at Kevin O'Connell's job being on the line potentially this season, so keep a very close eye on that team. Next up, we have a small little story here. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah of the Cleveland Browns, the linebacker. He was placed on the reserve, physically unable to perform list, which means he will not play this season. This is now the second consecutive season that JOK is not going to play football. And honestly, after the injury he had, I don't blame him for not playing. I think it's better to prioritize his health. I always say that. It's a strong belief of mine that every player needs to prioritize their own health and make sure that they're good, because that's more important than the team itself. At the end of the day, your ability to walk and have a normal life is more important than the game of football. And the good news about being put on the reserve PUP list is that in this case, he has full access still to proper medical care and benefits through the Cleveland Browns organization. So they're also doing it for him so that this way he can still get the help he needs and get better. So this is a good thing for him to help him rehab, get better, and that this way he has a better quality of life, especially once his contract expires. That probably won't be the case anymore once that happens, but in the meantime, he has full access to everything he needs to get as close to normal again as possible. And that's very important. I love that Cleveland's doing that for him. The next major story, the schedule release is coming. May 14th on Thursday. That is what we are waiting for. Thursday, we get the full schedule release for every NFL team, 8 p.m. Eastern. You'll find that all out on NFL Network, but we have that officially set. And we have a couple games getting leaked. For example, Giants-Cowboys Week 1. We already know that. We've already heard that story. And then we have the Jets and Breece Hall coming to an agreement on a new contract. Now, keep in mind, they had him tagged originally for this season. But now they have a long-term deal in place at 3 years, $45.75 million. I'm saying 3/4 because it's 0.75. And that's going to be worth about $15.25 a year. And this was done by his agent, Nicole Lynn. If you know her, you know that she's one of the best in the game of clutch sports. Breece Hall, man, there was points where I thought that this guy was going to be, I thought this guy was out. I thought this guy was done in New York. I thought because they wanted to trade him, because he was close to getting traded at the deadline, I thought it was over with, that he was done being a Jet and that the Jets were done with him. Everything that's happened this offseason has suggested otherwise. I'm actually surprised and glad that it went that way, because it's hard to find a good quality running back, and Breece is a quality running back. So kudos to the Jets. They locked down a guy that should be there as a future star. Next up, we have Tyrod Taylor finally finding a team in this process. He's joining the Green Bay Packers to be their backup quarterback. In turn, they released Desmond Ridder, the former starter in Atlanta a couple years ago. But Tyrod Taylor is now going to be QB2 behind Jordan Love. The need for backup was necessary after they had lost Malik Willis to the Dolphins this offseason, which was a fear that really did come to reality. I mean, at the end of the day, Malik deserves this. He deserves the big contract, but for the Packers, you don't want to lose somebody so valuable when you have two starter quality guys in your lineup that you could use at any point in case one of them gets hurt. So that was the beauty of having Malik. But now that they don't have Malik, that kind of changes things quite a bit. So I think in this case, this is a good move for Green Bay to get Taylor. I mean, again, Taylor's an older guy. Injury history is very, very prominent. But for Taylor's case, I think it can work in Green Bay. His play style matches somewhat of what LaFleur is trying to run over there. So I'm not knocking it. I think it's a pretty solid deal, good option. We'll see how he does there. Next up, we find out that L'Jarius Sneed, the former Chiefs and Titans cornerback, he had charges against him in Texas involving aggravated assault, which was reduced by the grand jury to a misdemeanor, and it was thrown out. All charges were dismissed. Now, that does not mean, once again, I'm going to say it. It does not mean he didn't do something. But with them dismissed, it means that they don't have anything that would stick in court. that would get him to see jail time or anything involving hefty fines or probation or anything like that. So Snead could have done it. He could have done something, but it's not enough to hold in court for him to be actually getting a serious punishment. So that's just something important I want you all to know. Just because these guys get found not guilty, just because charges get dismissed or swept under the rug, does not mean that these guys didn't do something. So keep that in mind. Now we move on to the next major story. Taylor Heinicke announced he's retiring from the NFL after 11 seasons. If you don't know Heinicke was the quarterback of the Washington football team at one point. If you remember that one miracle playoff run, they almost knocked off Tampa Bay the year that they won the Super Bowl. That wild card game was iconic. He almost beat Brady. And this was after he had basically gotten a call to come off the couch and just go out there and go play for them because they needed somebody to be a backup. And then the opportunity presented itself, and Heinicke almost won that game. He nearly knocked off the Buccaneers. So he deserves a lot of credit. Ever since then, he's stuck around for quite a few years now. And Heinicke, you can't find a bad thing to say about him. As a person, he was just incredible. Every person that you talk to, every former player, or anybody who's had the opportunity to coach him, they've all said great things about him. So I'm very, very happy for Taylor. Next up, you should have expected this if you watched the draft. The Packers have officially released their veteran kicker, Brandon McManus, after they had gone ahead and drafted a kicker in the 6th round from Florida in Trey Smack. So now they have a new kicker. They got rid of their veteran guy who was under contract. They've got it locked up. This is the story with the Packers. They have a new kicker. It was a little bit of a weak point last year, but now they've got a cheaper option that hopefully will be more effective. And hopefully for McManus, he's able to find a spot to play long term. Hopefully that could use his talents. I hope the best for him. I hope that ends up being the case, but there's no guarantees as a kicker in the National Football League. Another major story people wanted to talk about was with the New York Giants and the Odell Beckham situation. Is Odell Beckham going to play for the New York Giants? Well, Harbaugh spoke on that over the weekend and said that he had spoken to OBJ 3 or 4 times over the previous week about a reunion. But they're going to play it out over the next month and into training camp before they officially make a decision. So we may not see a decision until July or August. So we have to wait a little bit longer to see if Odell is actually going to go back to New York. That is a decision up to John Harbaugh to make, and he's not obligated to make that deal as much as we want to see him there. And then finally, we have 2 more stories that broke just today. The Chargers have officially agreed to terms with David Njoku on a 1-year deal at up to $8 million. He spent the past 9 years in Cleveland. He's now moving on to catch passes from Herbert. This is a big deal because the Chargers, one of their weak spots was at the tight end position. Now they have somebody viable there that they can trust as a veteran option. Although I will say Oronde Gads didn't show a lot of great stuff last year. Having a guy like Njoku, a veteran in the room, is much better. And you kind of want to have those opportunities. Unfortunately, this past couple years, he's had some injury problems, which is kind of why they went and got Harold Fannin. The production numbers dropped. His time on the field dropped. So they went and got Fannin. Fannin proved to be amazing. And so they stuck with him and let Njoku walk. Now he's a Charger. And finally, the last major story before we get into the top 3 I want to discuss in this show. The Steelers have agreed to terms with Chris Boswell, 4-year, $28 million extension. That average of $7 million per year is going to tie in with Brandon Aubrey for being the highest paid kicker in NFL history. He'll now be locked in with Pittsburgh through the 2030 season. So the Steelers, staying on the kicker trend, are keeping their kicker long term. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You stick with your guy. I personally don't love giving long-term extension to kickers because it's very quick where they can start, having a dip in performance, become more inconsistent with time. I'm very iffy on giving long-term extensions. I'd rather be having them constantly compete every year just to make sure that, you're still doing your job, right? You're still good. It's kind of just my personal mindset with managing that side of things, but kudos to the Steelers. They have a good guy who's a veteran. They love having their long-term kickers, and Boswell is one of those guys that's super reliable, super trusted. And I think the city of Pittsburgh will attest to that as well. And that's it for the top stories from this past week. That's now going to lead us into our first major story from this past week. We're going to talk about the Referee Association reaching a deal with the NFL on a new CBA deal that's going to last through 2032. And so this past week, we had noticed that there was a big story brewing this offseason about the potential risk of having replacement officials to start this season, and we've officially avoided that thanks to the NFL. The NFLRA has reached a new CBA deal with the NFL that will last until 2032. It's a 7-year period now where they'll be covered. They'll be officially working with the NFL, continuing their relationship over the next 7 years. And there's no need now to call up the college refs to go and become replacement officials, which the last time that happened, talk to Seattle and Green Bay about it, because that costed them an actual win. There was the whole controversy with that, with a catch in the end zone, which they couldn't figure out if it was an interception or a touchdown. I swear to you, the craziness behind that is just... You don't want to experience that again, especially if you're a young fan listening to this. You don't want to experience the replacement refs again. Trust me, it was very aggravating. But the most important thing to know about this whole NFLRA situation and the importance of this deal is very simple. The major hang-up behind it was more about accountability, because one of the biggest complaints from fans over the years is the inconsistency in officiating. There was no checks or balances system in which that you could keep the referees in check and doing their job correctly. That was the thing. You couldn't keep an eye on everything going on. You couldn't monitor everything and expect them to overturn calls. You're demanding to basically be more accountable for their actions. That's what they were looking to do. And also, at some kind of level here, we're looking for them to be more responsible. Like to not let their ego take over the job. Where that they don't want to give a call, or they're going to call something very minute because they don't like the way the player's talking about them or talking to them, if they're being disrespectful. I get that, but at the end of the day, as much as it's a respect thing, you want the respect, you don't ruin a game because they're not respecting you. That's a power thing. You don't do that. So this system that's now being put in place here through this CBA is going to increase the accountability for these referees and officials. So here's just essentially the basis of it. There's increased access to officials in the offseason, a development of a bench of officials, and there's going to be a new formal training program that will include mini camps, training camps, joint practices, just so that this way they all can be on the same page. You get better quality officiating, and you won't have as many issues long-term moving forward. So we love this for that reason. And I know you're thinking about it right now from the referee's perspective. Like, well, but like with the officials, like, why do they need this? Like, this sounds like it's just super condemning of them. Why in the world would they sign this? Well, it's because they got their raise. They've been asking for a raise for a while, and the NFL was holding off on it because they wanted to add this stuff in there, and they didn't want to budge. But now that they kind of came to an agreement on certain things, including a forgiveness window, some kind of windows involving benefits, they finally came to an agreement on stuff, and now they're going to get a very significant raise in their salary, which is what they have been waiting for, which I'm totally on board with. I mean, pay them what they're worth. And I think at the end of the day, we really kind of look at this whole officiating thing with this whole controversy, and I think as fans, we're all on the same page about this. We all agree that there needs to be more accountability in this whole situation. There has to be more accountability from the referees here, because this has been the issue. We haven't seen consistent officiating. We have not seen consistent officiating from the referees throughout the course of NFL games. Every crew is operating with different things. Now, I do want to make it very clear, I think the fans have a part in this too, because you really look at how the fans treat the officials. You can see for yourself that it's not very positive. It's all very critical no matter what the call is. I'll give you a good example, because there's a difference between a wrong call and a judgment call. And a lot of fans get on them for the judgment call, not a wrong call. So a wrong call is basically, let's say they're going to call a defensive pass interference call, but the offensive player's got his arm extended and creating his own separation, and the guy's just trying to get his arm off of him so he can close the gap. But they call the DPI in the corner for trying to push his arm away. But they don't call the OPI on the receiver who extended on him first. That's an example of a wrong call. You missed the OPI, and then you called the DPI for the response. So there's a couple of things where you say wrong call. That's just a small example. But let's say a judgment call would be, okay, we're going to call a holding on the offensive line here, And there's going to be screens about, but there wasn't holding. I don't see what he's talking about, this and that. Well, if you really look at it, here's how it's explained. Okay, a lot of O-linemen are trained to keep their hands to the inside of the chest plate here, to stay inside, because you don't want to hit the shoulders, because easily can get pulled either way, which will give you a holding. That's the thing. If you go more inside, it's harder to see the tug, because it doesn't show as much as if you're up here, where there's way more movement of the fabric. You come down here, it's not as evident, it's not as visible. So they train to have your hands wedged in there to get a good hold, and honestly, your objective is just to kind of land strong hits and maintain contact and carry them through and away from the play. That's typically what the O-line has to do, but there's going to be times where if you're holding and you're pulling like this, that's a holding. Or if you're reaching across a guy's body and grabbing right here and you're pulling this way, you're pulling his shoulder, that's holding. So we're talking about those kind of things, and you'll watch a referee call it on a guy they're breaking off the edge, and you see a hand underneath the shoulder pad, like up here, and he'll like have his hand there, but he's not necessarily gripping, but it's there. And because the hand is there and it's an arm across the body, it's considered some kind of hooking, and they'll call it a holding call. But to some average fans or fans of their team, they're going to say, but he doesn't have a hold of him. He's not holding him. Therefore, how can you call it a holding? It's because he's deterring the momentum of the defender. He's limiting his ability to be able to get by, even though he's already beaten him. That's what you'll see quite often, actually. So that's like the difference between like a judgment call and a wrong call. So in this case, we see a lot of fans get on the refs for what they call missed calls, but they're actually judgment calls, because it comes down to the official to say, okay, listen, I think he's grabbing him here, he's pulling, I think he's deterring him and affecting his momentum to get through, even though he was already beaten, so we're going to call that a holding. Where you'll have another ref who says, well, I don't think because his hand didn't grab and he's kind of flowing through, his arm isn't necessarily locked, he could still fight through it and carry through. I don't think that's a holding. I think we're good. So it just comes down to kind of how the official sees it, interprets it, because the rules can be a little muddy when you get complicated scenarios. And for this case, I think whatever the rule says goes. You have to go off the core principle. Holding, is he deterring him? That's the number one question. And if he does that, then you got to call it. But like I said, that's more of a judgment call than anything else. And the institution of a new training program that will include mini camps, training camps, and joint practices, that's going to help create a more consistent level across the board among all officials. That's the objective of this new program. So this way we eliminate those judgment calls. You want to limit, one, how many wrong calls you have, and two, how many judgment calls are made, where it can go either way. So essentially you get to this place where, okay, the judgment calls becomes a consistent right or wrong call rather than it might be the right call, but it could also be the wrong call. It depends on the perspective you look at it from. You reduce the amount of those situations and make it more concrete, black and white. Is it right or is it wrong? Make the call. Done. So in this case, I like that kind of system where it's more clean-cut, thorough, but also there's accountability tied to it. And this whole bench idea is essentially like if an official's not doing well and he's missing a lot of calls, they'll have reserve referees that they can put in their place and put the other guy on a break for a few weeks to kind of retrain and get better before he gets put back out in the field, which I think is a solid idea. And I think it's a very good way to keep accountability. If you're not going to do your job correctly, then you're going to have to sit and wait and take some extra training so that this way the next time you get thrown out there, you're going to make less of those calls. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a super positive idea that's very beneficial for the long-term success and trust of the referees and the referee association as a whole, because fans and players alike complain about them all the time. This is a good way to kind of bridge that and just eliminate it altogether from the concerns of the public and of the players and coaches alike. So this is not a bad thing. I think this is very good and very fair for both sides. It does depend on who you ask, though, but regardless of that fact, I think that the fact that they got the CBA done is more important than anything else, because we are not dealing with replacement refs, and that is a win for everybody across the board. But that does mean we have to go on to our next topic, and I've been dreading talking about this because she's such a nice lady from how I have met her and from the conversations I've had with her. It's Dianna Russini, the scandal with her and Mike Vrabel. Okay, I never want to talk about this stuff because I'm not someone to go out there and completely shut down and attack somebody that doesn't deserve it. Because let's be real, a lot of the jokes, a lot of the treatment she's been receiving on the timelines have been ridiculous to the point where it's almost like somebody's closeted misogyny is coming out. And I never ever use that word lightly. If I use it, you know you did something wrong. I mean, listen, it became at first like people on the internet really don't value the emotions of the people they're talking about. They really don't take that into consideration. You want to focus on the fact that, oh, she's a homewrecker. She cheated. She's been cheating with him. And, oh, he cheated on his wife with her. She's terrible. But also the fact they don't want to give the proper accountability to Mike Vrabel, who was married for 27 years and has been cheating with her potentially for the last 6 years. So there's a whole saga here to get into. Before we do that, I want to give off my personal experience with Dianna because I'm sure me mentioning it probably made you go, wait, what? Yeah. So if you don't know me and you don't know my story, I do a little bit of media work outside of, this podcast, outside of streaming. But I do a little bit of work outside of this. I do some interviews. I'll do some scouting work. And I've been doing that independently on the side. And a couple years ago, I was going to the Senior Bowl and I was doing Senior Bowl events. This past year, I was not able to go. I had a conflict involving my passport and my identification, so I could not go. So because of that, I ended up staying home this year, not going to the Senior Bowl and saving some money. But outside of that, I ended up meeting Russini back in 2025, the year before that. So in 2025, I went to the Senior Bowl. Great event, by the way. If you've never been, I would definitely ask you guys to try and get out to Mobile one time for this event. It's awesome. They do an amazing job there. But on those days, right, they do open practices for the media for like 3 days worth. And then they also have private interviews that we get to do with them in a room in a expo center. So we get like Monday through Thursday to do coverage with them. And then Fridays is like a chill day. And then Saturday's the game. And then that's it. We're out of there. Most media people leave by Thursday, like by Friday. They maybe hang out till Friday. They don't stay for the game. They leave after the game. They don't stick around. In our case, we stuck around until Sunday, so this way we could leave on Sunday and get back to our back to the Northeast. And in this case, when I was down there with my buddies, I was doing my scouting work. I was with a couple other guys. One of them was a team scout. And we were just kind of watching the works going on, especially the guys working through the drills and then starting to do their stuff with the one-on-ones between the receivers and corners, tight ends and corners. Just kind of watching all their work. And behind me, I hear my buddies talking, and I see that they're talking to Dianna. And she had also said something to Mary Kay Cabot, if you know her, Browns reporter. They knew each other. I don't know how well they knew each other, but I did see them interact. I got up. And I decided to go up there, and I was going to walk by and check with my buddies. So then she saw me. I was wearing a Patriots hat, ironically. And she said hello, and she asked me, "Oh, are you a Patriots fan?" And I'm like, I was like, in the moment I should have said yes. But I ended up saying no, because I'm not a Patriots fan. I was just being truthful. And I was like, no, I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm just wearing the hat today. I wear a bunch of different hats. It's just me. If you know me, I'm literally the hat guy. If you know me, I'm literally the hat guy. But yeah, so we had a whole conversation about that. And then after that, we discussed really quick, I talked about, I really like what the Patriots are doing. They're doing really good. I think Vrabel's going to do an excellent job there. I have a lot of trust in him. He did a lot of great work at Tennessee. It sucks how things ended there, but I think for the Patriots, him working with Drake May is probably the best thing for Drake May's career and development. And that's all I was saying. I was trying to give him a little bit of nice respect, try to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about, which if you watch this show, I do. And she was very nice about it, and she said, yeah, I think they're going to be great this year. I really got a lot of hope for them as a team. I really like Drake May too. I'm like, yeah, I think they're going to be great. I have, as long as they draft well and then everything gets done well and he's got a good staff put together, I think they're going to be great. She goes, absolutely agree. And then that was it. She said, nice to meet you guys. She walked away. again, so like I said, it was a very positive interaction. I never had a problem with her. She was always super nice, super sweet. But I mean, hindsight 2020, it makes it more interesting that she talked to me because I had a Patriots hat on and not because, I was with my friends. Again, she had no idea I knew them. She just came up to, she just started a conversation because I was wearing a Patriots hat. And so that's what she started talking to me about. So I locked on the Patriots combo. But regardless of that fact, let it be known also that this story does suck. It sucks for me personally because I never had a bad experience with her. She was never, ever mean or, wrong, did any wrongdoing to me or anyone else that I knew. But what I do understand is that a lot of the media is quiet about this, and I think that's also wrong. You have to be talking about this. This is a major story affecting an NFL coach and an NFL team and a reporter. This has to be talked about. So I'm going to do what they don't want to do. So we'll start off with a couple things and go through this whole saga. Obviously, you know that the way this started was that the two of them were spotted together in Arizona at a resort. That's how it started. We all know that. That's how it started, as a luxury hotel in Arizona. That is how this began. They were seen holding hands, hugging, and spending time together at a hotel in Sedona. And I mean, I don't need to be a mind reader for y'all to understand like the full depth of what I'm talking about, because it's not like I'm bringing up something that's not real. You have the photos here. It's super evident here that these two were close with the hug. I mean, he's like doing the whole and it's like the little reach over hug's like nothing. Like this, all this to me meant nothing. All of this meant nothing at first. Because when I first watched this, I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not too concerned about it. Because I'm like, if you know how reporters work and how insiders work, they'll do whatever it takes to get the story. Okay? That does not mean that, again, that she was doing anything in terms of physical, intimate stuff with him. But the fact that she's close around him and being around him is a way to make him comfortable with telling her any information she may want to know. This way she can use her story as long as he gives her the consent for it. So like from that perspective, that's how I was looking at it. It's an investigative reporter thing. Like I'm not thinking more beyond that. Insiders are insiders. They're going to do what they can to get the information as long as they do it ethically. So there was that. But you think about this story, people ran with it, the internet runs with it, they go psychotic about it. Oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. Like, enough, bro. Like, at first I was getting annoyed by it. And then came more photos. The bar photo comes out. And when the bar photo comes out, I'm like, okay, this is weird. Because you're getting photographed at the bar, and it wasn't because, like, getting photographed at the bar is a weird thing, like being at a bar with coaches and with managers. Because you want the truth? These guys hang out with these reporters really often in the NFL. Once you have been in the rooms with these people, you quickly understand that there's deeper relationships with these reporters and insiders than you want to believe. Why do you think they are able to get information so fast? Because they have direct contacts into the front office and to the coaching staff to find this information, as long as they get consent to release that information. And that's it. That is essentially how it works. So this is no different. This is no different, y'all. This is no different. But what makes it different is the timing of the photo. The photo coming out now, right after this photo comes out of them in Arizona, which, by the way, the resort, no children, couples getaway. That's what made it weird in my belief. But also they were both with two different parties and like with their friends, and they just happened to be hanging out together at some point. So it's like, sure. But I don't know. I don't want to give any more airtime to that. But the bar photo threw me off because the bar photo was taken when he was still in Tennessee. And when that's the case, that means their relationship goes farther back. Fine. That means they could have still a cordial relationship. There was no photo of them kissing or anything in the intimate side of things or physical. They were just hanging out together, having a drink, laughing. Fine. I didn't see anything wrong with that necessarily. But I think the nail in the coffin came, for me, when everything happened with The Athletic. The Athletic opened investigation. They were looking into it. It sounded like they were going to fire her, but then she resigned and claimed innocence. Because once she claimed the innocence, it wasn't that I didn't believe her. What it became for me was, you're under investigation. If you believe you are innocent, you're going to fight this. If you're innocent, you're going to fight this and try to keep your job. But you didn't do that. And as a result, that tells me there is some guilt. There is something that happened that we don't know about. That was my first time where I went, okay, so something definitely did happen. And again, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's a recent thing. You know, they've known each other for years. It's just a recent thing that happened. And maybe they're both having problems in their marriages or something, and something's going wrong. And, you know, they just find comfort in each other. Like, that's another thing. And they're both consenting adults. If that's how they feel, that's how they feel. But they need to take care of that behind closed doors and keep it out of the public eye. And that was not happening. And then finally, the news story that basically is like my gut punch, that basically told me, all right, this has been going on for a while. And it's a TMZ video that comes out. And this is where I officially said, yeah, something happened. And it's been going on for a while. Just watch this video really quick. That's all you got to know. All right? That's all you have to know. Because at the end of the day, this is what we need to understand. That video is of Dianna Russini when she was pregnant, and that's Mike Vrabel on the dock. This was taken in 2020 when she was pregnant. And again, this was her first pregnancy. She had 2 kids with her husband, Kevin Goldschmidt, who is if I'm correct, an executive at Shake Shack. That whole story is just now led to a very rough area, because the Russini that we're seeing from the bar, those pictures with Mike Vrabel, were from 2020, March, right before COVID. She ended up getting married in September of 2020. I mean, there's a timeline there. She's pregnant, she has her kid, but they were hanging out while she was pregnant. Like, there's so much there that I really don't want to give so much airtime to it, but just understand, I think this relationship was going on for a lot longer. She was probably seeing Mike. I'm not going to lie to you. She probably was seeing Vrabel for 6 years. Or 7 years, potentially. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, again, the problem is it happened for so long that at the end of the day, it's going to be in the public eye. It's going to be a joke. It's going to be treated like a joke, but in the league, it's going to be taken very seriously. And here's my official, final point on this before we move on to Kenny Moore. These are both adults. You can make the jokes about Russini. You're going to make the jokes about Vrabel. But you got to feel bad for their partners, for their spouses. Because at the end of the day, those spouses didn't even know this was going on. The only one who supposedly knew was her husband, who was suspicious and hired a PI, because only a PI gets that kind of stuff. Only a PI gets that information. That's it. Like, just so you understand, only a PI could get those kind of photos, and the timing of it all getting released is either by him or by somebody close to him who is a lawyer or something, like a legal team. Somebody's putting this information out to make it look like, hey, listen, this has been going on for a long time. And it's trying to help his case, I think, in case a divorce goes through. Which, the last I heard, there was no guarantee there was going to be a divorce here. They were going to try and counsel and get this thing done. But the more that comes out, we're kind of in this point where it's like, how much more can you take with the more of the information that comes out to try and make this, to find forgiveness with her? So they're working in that privately. I have no information to give you on that. I have nothing. I'm not privy to that information. I have no knowledge on that. Vrabel's situation, from what I understand, he's reconciling with this wife and trying to spend more time with his family to fix things. So, difference is, you've got a marriage that's been going on for 27 years. I think it's easier to fix a 27-year marriage when it comes to something like this than it is to fix a 6-year marriage. So, realistically, I think there's better chances that Vrabel's relationship, his marriage will be okay. I think with Russini's, it's trending towards a bad direction. I'm hoping the best for both parties, that they're able to find forgiveness from their partners, forgive themselves, and also find forgiveness from God. Because if I take the Christian approach, we all are just completely, none of us are perfect. None of us are sinless. We all have skeletons in our closet. But for Russini's situation, this is one where you got to find forgiveness. You've got to ask for forgiveness. And they're not entitled to forgive you. Your husband's not entitled to forgive you either. But, I'm not going to sit here and say it 100% happened. I think the evidence suggests it happened. But I'm not 100% confident that it did, because anything could have happened. The only weird thing is just like all the private time together, even when she was pregnant for the last 6 years. That's the only thing that throws me off. That's it. But I feel like it could be an insider thing. It's just a reporter thing, because she was getting inside info from stuff on guys like A.J. Brown. She was getting stuff on Julio Jones. She was getting stuff on some big stories involving the Titans, but also the Patriots too. So, like, there's so many things tied to this that I don't know. I don't know. The worst thing that she can get hit with here, or Vrabel can get hit with, which, by the way, I've seen the stuff about him losing his job. Just stop it. Just stop it. He loses his job if he gave away sensitive information to her through the favors that were given, if there were any favors. And in that case, leaking sensitive information would get you fired. So that's the only way he gets punished, is if the Patriots fire him because of him giving up sensitive information, which we truly don't know how deep the relationship was where he was giving up that info. But either way, that's something the organization is going to deal with and handle, not something that we can handle as people, as reporters and as fans. Like, that's not our job. Let them handle it. Their business. It's their business. And that's my thoughts on the Russini Vrabel scandal. I think this whole thing is just gotten out of control. I think she has not deserved the responses she has been getting from people. I understand people want somebody to joke about and somebody to make a scandal about and just blow out of proportion, make the new meme. But, like, they shouldn't be taking in that direction. I've even seen some really disgusting photos. It's the one time where I actually agree with Dave Portnoy on the fact that this is just out of control. Let's just stop it now. Like let's just take it down a notch. It's the one time I agree. I can say that much. But that now leads us to our next topic. We're going to take a step into the tape room, and we're going to talk about what's going on with Mr. Kenny Moore. He just got released by the Colts. We're going to talk about his situation there. They couldn't find a trade partner. They've been trying to find one for the last few weeks. Couldn't find one. So they made the trade. And now now they've released him. Now at this point, we're going to have to figure out for Kenny Moore, what is a good fit for him? Where should he go? Where should he play? What teams could use a guy like him? What does he do well? And that's what the tape room is for. So let's go ahead and enter the film room and see what tape we got on him that could tell us what he can bring to another team. All right, so we're going to take a look at this really quick. Pre-snap, this is against the Dolphins. You got one in the backfield to the left of Tua. You got another running back behind here, okay? Then you got the receiver situation here. You're going to watch Tyreek move inside, and you're going to have this corner watch the behavior of Kenny Moore on this play. Okay, Kenny Moore's assignment is that he wants to get downhill, right? Okay, he's going to get downhill, but just keep an eye on what's going to happen. Okay, there's going to be a fake handoff from the running back, and he's just going to sit here and be ready to pass protect either here or swing out here and get another pass protect, which he's going to need to do because Kenny is going to come downhill and try to get to the quarterback fast. So what does that look like in real time? Let's take a look. So now here comes Tyreek moving inside. See how he shifted? He shifted. He called it out to the linebacker, said, watch him, watch him, watch him. And now you're watching the safety playing both of these receivers in the back end. He's keeping a very close eye here. And then here comes Kenny downhill. Fake the handoff. Tua's going to turn. And the running back doesn't see him until late. And he's out of position. Lower body's not set well. He's got to recover. He's not going to get him. He's already lost. Kenny's now going to go after Tua. Tua sees him now. He tries to run and escape. Too late. Gets the hand on the ball. Comes free. There's your turnover. It's recovered by Xavier Howard. We run back to this angle. You're going to see a better look at what I was talking about when it gets downhill quick. So you see Franklin's now going to shift out to the wide zone. He's going to watch the outside. He's going to take over where Kenny Moore was originally covering because Kenny said, I'm going. Running back stops right here. He doesn't see him coming. He's not able to recover in time, so it's a free run at the QB. Here he goes. Tua goes step up. Great hands right there on that one. You want to see the hand placement. Look at where the hand is right here on this tackle attempt, all right? Right here. Hands were high. He went high. He took around he got his arms, popped the ball free. You hit with the hands, get the ball to pop, and then from right there, it's free. Here comes Howard downhill, recover it, fall on it, boom. That's what you want to see. So you see a guy that's got potential to create turnovers that way that we wouldn't typically see any other way from other corners. One of the most desired things we want to see a corner do is be able to put his hand on the ball and change the course of a play and of a drive by being active in where he is tackling and where he's putting his hands. Again, super, super important that the guy knows that the instinct is to attack the ball, not the player. the player's secondary, the ball is primary. That's a new thing that's been trending among defensive coaches and how they're coaching up defensive backs now and linebackers. When you tackle, go for the ball first, then get the person, but make sure you have them both secure when you go for the tackle. So that's another thing. But at times, obviously, it doesn't work out well. You might tackle a little high, and if you don't get the punch through, he can pull you, and now you're getting beat on the tackle, and he gets extra yards. You can't have that. But in this case, it works out really well on a quarterback in a pass rush situation. So we know that Kenny's still got some pass rush ability to him. Let's take a look at another play here with the Colts here, and they're up against the Titans here. It's a big game against Cam Ward and the Titans. In this case, we're looking for 23 once again. And in this case, look at where Kenny is. Do you all see where Kenny is? I'm going to highlight him in a minute. Okay, Kenny is right here. Kenny once again playing in kind of a slot alignment, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But just kind of look at where everything's kind of located here. Okay, he's going to try and drop back into coverage here, and he's going to pick up on something with the running back. So watch the running back right here and where he's going to go, because he's going to end up coming across this way and watching, and then as a dump-off option, he's going to try and slide out along the line of scrimmage to be a dump option in case what Ward is looking for is not available on the left or right side. This way he could just go left to right and dump it off. But Kenny is going to read it beautifully, and he's going to attack downhill. So you're going to see it very quickly break down. Let's see it happen right now. So now he shifts the running back to his right. Ridley's going across the formation. Here's the snap. He's reading left. He's looking through the triangle. He can't find anything open. So now he's going to look across. He doesn't have anything there. If he was a little bit more patient, he could have had his guy over the middle. He doesn't. He ends up moving on too fast. He goes to the middle. Now he's going to go right for the dump right quick. Watch Kenny very carefully at the bottom of the screen. He sets. Look how quickly he's going to get downhill the second he's setting a throw. Beautiful positioning. Gets it there. The route's a little high, but it works out beautifully for Moore. In this case, he gets the pick, takes it downhill, gets the touchdown. Let's see what it looks like here from this close view. Again, Tony Pollard getting shifted to that right side. They've got 5 on the line. You know Okonkwo is going to run here. He's in for protection. Now he's going to go. Dump it beautifully right there. Takes it downhill, right down to the end zone. Pick 6 for Kenny Moore. This is what Kenny was signed for, is to do this kind of stuff. This is why the Colts love this guy so much. It's a shame that he's gone and that he's no longer going to be a Colt at this point, but you see his coverage ability. He's got the instincts and knowledge necessary to read plays and get downhill quick to just disrupt everything in every way possible. I love that about him. He's a disruptor. He's a wild card. He played very well in the alignment this year in the slot. But to really understand where Kenny's game was good and where it's been sliding, we have to look at the advanced stats. Let's go take a look at that very quickly. So among qualifying defenders, this is among just the Colts stats alone in the advanced stats area, you see that Kenny Moore pops up in 4th in this area, and the reason why I want to highlight this is because it's for the passer rating. His passer rating in this case was just above an 85, which is okay. It's not phenomenal, but it's a very solid number, very respectable. He was targeted 64 times this year, allowed 38 catches. Again, on average, you're not going to get below 50%. You get below 50% completions allowed, you're a stud. But in this case, that's not happening. Now, he did get some good pressures. He got involved, got a sack and a half this year. But most notably, he played in 14 games, but only started in 7 of them. Now, whether that's a medical thing, whether that's a personnel thing, that's on them. But he played over 680 snaps. This guy got a lot of playing time on the field. He was used a lot in run defense on top of doing some coverage. But that's what makes Kenny Moore so versatile, is that Kenny could do it all. Now, in previous years, you want to know about previous years, about how good were his numbers in other years. Well, in 24, we're looking at Kenny Moore as playing 15 games as a starter, over almost 1,000 snaps played. And you look at his numbers then, he didn't have as many sacks last year, but in terms of pressure, he was getting pressure at 16%, which is a high rate, and was targeted 76 times, allowed 47 catches, more touchdowns, but got more interceptions. Passer rating was lower. 23, another big year for Kenny Moore, yet he had the most snaps on the team that year. 3 interceptions, allowed 4 touchdowns, 89 passer rating. He didn't have as strong of a year that year. You go to 22 with Kenny. Kenny started 12 games, 738 snaps, comparable to this season. You go through everything else on his metrics, and his passer rating was abysmal at 119.7 allowed. Couldn't secure an interception, allowed 4 touchdowns, allowed a lot of catches, didn't get nearly as much pressure as he would hope for. So we look at the difference. The growth of Kenny Moore over the last few seasons has been very commendable. But if you look at Kenny Moore himself, okay, 5'9", 190. He's already undersized as it is. He's 30 years old. He's going to be 31 in August. So we have a 31-year-old defensive back. Usually that doesn't bode too well. And the reason why I'm saying that is because as a defensive back gets older, you can't expect him to be at the same physical traits as he was when he first came in or when he was in his physical prime, which his prime would have been a couple years ago, maybe. So that would be the argument there. 420 coverage snaps. We talked about the targeting. We talked about everything he had here. Only had 1 pick this year. His rating was pretty solid. The catch percentage is what I really like to see. I want to see, is this guy allowing a lot of catches? Is he doing well on other areas? In terms of catch percentage, Xavier Howard allowed the highest on the team at 70%. But also when you go to the lowest, Kenny Moore was at 59.4. What happens if I set it to all teams for catch percentage with qualified defenders? Who allowed the highest percentage of catches? We see that guys like Marcus Epps and Wanye Thomas were pretty high on that list. But if we go the opposite way, who allowed the least, the lowest percentage, I'm going to look for high amount of coverage snaps. Who had a lot of coverage snaps was able to do this. So we see guys like R.J. Mickens doing well. We see guys like James Pierre, Julian Love, Quinyon Mitchell. But you see how quickly the percentage shoots up into the 40s? That's what we're looking at. And it doesn't take long to get into the 50s. So there's 17 players who were below 50% in terms of catch percentage, catches allowed, which is already impressive enough. That's how rare it is to have a really good defensive back do this. And a lot of these guys don't have the same snap counts. But if we look at guys like Joby, McKinney, Stingley, Tre'Davious White, Theo Jackson, we take a look at guys like Azariah Thomas, Jamel Dean, Kalen Bullock, Quinyon Mitchell, Julian Love, James Pierre. These guys had a lot of time on the field. Same goes for R.J. Mickens. Maybe they didn't start a lot of games, but they had a lot of really good performances. So catch percentage is a very important metric to know how good is your corner doing. And Charvarius Ward was very well graded in that regard. So when I talk about a guy like Kenny Moore, where does that leave Kenny in everything? Because Kenny and Sauce were around the same spot. So if you want to go off the numbers of how well he did in terms of rating and what he allowed, you want to comp a player to him. I think the closest you can get to a comp for him is probably around I want to say like Josh Metellus or maybe like Cooper DeJean in that area, I think is how successful he was. You can also have Grant Delpit. And depending on how you think of those players, that'll tell you if you think he was good or not this past year. I think he was pretty good. So I'm not knocking it. I think he has a lot of great potential to do a lot in the National Football League still. He's got more time to go. And that leads me to this. What teams should make a run at Kenny Moore this offseason? And the teams that should run, I'm going to give you 3 right now. Number 1, the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins need everything. They need everything, y'all. Why wouldn't the Dolphins go out and get this guy? Like, genuinely, what is stopping you from going to get Kenny Moore? I understand Kenny is like 31. He's going to be 31 when the season starts. But when I think about everything long term, I'm left asking myself a lot of questions. And my main question I have is, what are we doing? What are we doing? Because for Miami, this is a guy you don't skip on. The versatility of a guy like Kenny Moore is very evident. He can rush the passer. He can be a good run stopper. He can play very well out of the slot, which means you can use him in nickel packages, which is amazing. You don't have to have him start every game. But out of the nickel package, he can be super impactful and successful. The snap count matters more than the actual games he starts. If he starts 7 games but plays 500 snaps because he played in all 17, that's more important to me than a guy who started 15 games but only played 400 snaps. Like, that's different to me, and I feel like that's something I would love to see more of from Kenny. I'd love to see a team use him in that way. So the Dolphins could always use help on that defense. They're a rebuilding team. He could do well there. My next team I'm going to throw up the Minnesota Vikings. I know I just mentioned Metellus before, but adding him to that defense is going to make the Minnesota Vikings so much more dangerous and give them so much more flexibility on their defense to do more in the secondary. And they already want to rebuild this defense and make it better and make them more competitive in an already competitive NFC North. I mean, the Lions, the Packers, the Bears are back. Like, you got to find a way to put yourself back in this fight, or else you and your coach are going to lose your jobs. You got to figure something out. And I think Kenny could be a good solution for now. And finally, I think the New Orleans Saints would be a great team. I think the New Orleans Saints, to me, are my favorite pick because the Saints would love to have a guy that has the flexibility to play anywhere on a defense, and this guy can play anywhere on a defense. As a Tampa fan, I hate it. But as a football fan, I know he's right for the Saints. So if the Saints want to get a guy that can play coast to coast anywhere, especially in the slot alignment where he succeeded the most this year, that is the guy you go for. You're never, ever not in need of a nickel back. You always need somebody who can play as a corner, play as a hybrid safety. It doesn't matter. This guy can do it all. And that's what I really like about Kenny, and I think that's why teams should give him more opportunities, and I think this is the best case scenario where he can build up his reputation once again, even though I thought his reputation was already pretty solid. So credit to Kenny Moore. This is the best thing for him and for his career, so I'm happy for him, and we'll just see what happens from here. But this leads us to our final segment, our feel-good moment of the weekend. Let's get to it. And for our feel-good moment of the weekend, I've got something very special for y'all that I think y'all are really going to enjoy. I know I was angry about it when it happened, when Mekhi Lemon ended up becoming a Philadelphia Eagle. But I always love seeing what it looks like inside a war room or in the draft room when a trade goes down, when something big goes down. And what does the negotiation process look like? What does the conversation look like? Well, we did get a glimpse of it, and Ari Meirov on May 3rd posted that clip, and we're going to take a look at that clip right now. Let's pull that clip up.
Who's the best candidates if you were them?
On who?
Got a player, yeah.
Coming to our 20 to move to 20.
Yeah.
Philly.
Just call Howard, Steve.
Oh, well, he's gonna, if you call, we're gonna be giving the 6. I'm hoping he'll call and say we'll do the 2 4s. We got time. We got a few minutes. We're not like we're down to the 20 seconds we were. He's trying to call me? I tell him I'm calling him. Hello? Howie? Howie? Hey, this is Steven. How you doing, man? Our 7th next year? We just we're good. No, we don't want to. We're already giving up picks for this year. We're out of them. We're out of picks. But anyway, we for sure do it for the 2 4s.
You good?
I'll throw you a next year 7.
Okay, we got a deal.
We got a deal.
Politics and football make strange bedfellows. The Eagles and Cowboys made a trade.
You're on 3 spots. You picked up 2 4.
This is Tess.
Yes, this is Stephen Jones. We're trading this pick to Philadelphia.
Okay.
We're trading pick 20 for their pick 23, and and we get their 114 and 137 in the 4th.
Okay.
And
One
we
second,
give
just-
back our 7th next year.
7 next year. Okay.
Funny how quick it kind of unfolds.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
There's your proof that the Steelers were on the phone with him.
Hey, why Philly calling? God.
Oh, Philly just traded for you.
Hello?
This is Philly. They just traded for you.
This is Howie Roseman. I'm the GM of the Eagles. How you doing? We just traded up. We're picking you. You're an Eagle. Congrats, brother. Let's do it.
Let's get to work, man.
Congratulations.
I love the way this kind of stuff unfolds. I love it. Because this is a real glimpse into what actually happens. Like this is what I dig about this. I love this kind of stuff. But for Mekhi Lemon in this case, this is a guy who was literally, we now have proof he was on the phone with the Steelers when they called. Finishes the call and then he's like, "Wait, Eagles are calling me." He picks up the phone. They're like, "Hey, It's high rows and we're picking you. Okay. I guess I'm going to be an Eagle, not a Steeler. So now we have confirmation that it was the Steelers who wanted Lemon first. They didn't get him because Philly traded up. And then they had to pivot, which they did, for Iannicher. But in this case, like, I mean, if you're Philly, this is like a crazy deal. And I think the funnier part is watching how Dallas is like, well, we want to trade this pick. Who's going to want it? Who's going to want this pick? And they're kind of discussing it. They're like, I guess you want to call Howie? I'm like, all right, cool. Call Howie. Hey, Howie, what are you doing? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a deal. Sure. What do you want? What can you give us on top of these picks we're going to offer you? And he goes, all right, how about we take, can we get this year's 7th? They go, I'm already giving up enough this year. Why don't I give you, how about we'll take next year's 7th? And he goes, all right, cool. That's it. We'll take it. He's like, awesome. Okay, cool. Deal's done. And that's it. So the Eagles gave him 2 forts this year, just them to go down 3 picks to make their pick. And the rest is history. It's just kind of crazy seeing how that whole sequence unfolded. And I think it's a feel-good moment for me because it's like, we want to see the inside works of a war room on draft night. Anytime we get a look into the front office and how they make decisions, it's a beauty. I love when we get a really good peek at that. And this was a good example of that. So this is like my feel-good moment of the weekend. It's just kind of getting the chance to see that clip and seeing for ourselves, how does a front office work? And now we get that physical visual here at our disposal. But that's going to do it for our show. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate y'all tuning in. I know it's a little later episode than usual because typically, we have it ready in the morning, but we had a little bit of a conflict come up during our show recently, and everything I had ready to go the night before, the audio was dead, so we had to redo this, and unfortunately, you get hit with these moments, but it doesn't stop us. We're here. We're always performing. We got another episode coming on Friday, so be ready for that. Keep your eye out for that. We got an episode coming out Friday. But until then, we'll see y'all soon. I appreciate every single one of you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow all the channels. The Brian Mansell Show is on Spotify and on YouTube. Make sure you follow all those channels, like the video so you don't miss anything else coming out soon. And also, just so you don't miss out on future live streams, check out Bampa Bay on Twitch. That's a little private account. That's a little thing for y'all. I talk about some ball there, react to some popular trending internet videos, and also do some gameplay. So if you like that kind of stuff, you can check out the Twitch channel there. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate all of you for being here, and we'll see you next time. See you on Friday.